Good morning. My name is Susanna Perry Gilmore. I'm the concertmaster of the Omaha Symphony and a frequent and fortunate participant in the Omaha Chamber Music Society's concert series. And I've been asked to join all of you this morning and talk to you about chamber music and the place it has in my life and has had in my life, and in my opinion, why I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I had a formative experience when I was 14 years old at a summer program at Indiana University in a string quartet coaching situation. It was really my first time playing chamber music and trying to understand how to play Schubert's Rosamunde quartet, and as in the second violin part. And there was one extraordinary moment after it seemed like weeks of frustration and not being able to attain our musical goals, when our cellist, the student cellist, decided not to show up. And so the remaining three of us were faced with what to do in that hour. And our coach, who was the wonderful cellist of the Fine Arts Quartet, Wolfgang Laufer, he decided to sit in and play the cello part, and not only play the cello part, but have us sight read the second movement. And that was my first major aha moment as a musician. The way Wolfgang Laufer played, I had an epiphany that what was happening was that music was a conversation between individuals. And he sort of reached into this ragtag group of students of different abilities and elevated us and pulled us up to a new level of being able to communicate with each other through the music that Schubert wrote. It was such an extraordinary experience for me. I feel like at that moment I found my why. Like, why practice etudes? Why practice scales? Why work at the violin, which in general was a very harsh master. Like, it's very, continuously challenging and frustrating. But throughout the rest of my time as a student, all the way through grad school and beyond, I kept coming back to that moment where I wanted to make music like I knew that it was possible to make music like we did in that particular session, and that music at its best is chamber music, whether it's in a large orchestra or whether it's two people, and everything in between. I've always sought out chamber music experiences, even though my entire professional career for the most part has been as concertmaster of a symphony orchestra. The concertmaster role, though, in my opinion, is to encourage as much chamber music listening and performing, and that is definitely what's happening in the front row of the Omaha Symphony with the string principals, because we're sitting close enough to each other. It's like a slightly more spread out Mendelssohn octet setup. And I think also that in chamber music, every musician needs to be self-directed. Every part is a solo part. Every part has a function, has a role. And in order to play together without a conductor, there needs to be sort of self-direction musically, both with movement and in breathing together, and in the way we listen to each other. And I think that there's a connection between leadership in a string section of a symphony orchestra and people who are chamber players in their hearts. And that what conductors are frequently looking for when they pick leaders in orchestras is the confidence that this leader can lead a section, can self-conduct. And so I do think that there's a strong connection between people with developing skills in chamber music and orchestra leadership, section leadership. I'll finish with one of my favorite anecdotes that I heard when I think it was after I finished graduate school, and actually my very first job was in a string quartet, a professional quartet. We were based out in California, and we had a grant through the NEA to live in a rural community and be musical missionaries out there. The second year I was in that quartet, we brought on Paul Katz from the Cleveland Quartet, the great cellist from the Cleveland Quartet, to do several performances with us of my favorite chamber piece ever written, also by Schubert, the cello quintet. And he reminded us at one point of the description of a string quartet like a bottle of wine. If a string quartet is a bottle of wine, the cello is the bottle. Without it, everything would just be a puddle of liquid on the floor. It plays a very important function in that bottle of wine, harmonically, sonically. The first violinist is the label. It is what might make somebody pick one bottle of wine from another bottle of wine, and might give it a certain distinctive sound, some flair that is particular to that bottle of wine. But the second violin and the viola, they are the wine. They are the substance, without which the bottle would be completely empty. And I like this analogy because I believe about music in general that every person participating has a function. Sometimes it's accompanimental, sometimes it's leading, sometimes it's a counter melody, but everything needs everything else and has a function, and the functions change. So I'll leave you with that thought today, and I'll leave you with, again, back to the thing I said earlier, that I always try when I play music to communicate and to tell the story that is in the music that I feel the composer is trying to tell, both with the people I'm playing with and for the people that I'm listening with. And all the wonderful composers of great string quartets like Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, Brahms, Bach, Schubert, Schumann, etc. The list goes on and on. They have provided us with a script without words that is even more profound and evocative and philosophical than most of us can come up with when we're trying to use our words. So these pieces, they carry us and they can elevate us, just like in that little practice room at Indiana University with other young teenagers new to chamber music, just like Wolfgang Laufer was able to communicate to us at that moment and show us that there's a different world out there. Thank you. we look forward to seeing you at concerts again soon.